G'day crew, welcome to Goat Fantasy. It's the Round 12 Rage Trade edition. The Goat Fantasy podcast brought to you by checkmyrates.au. Visit the website, it's free to use. Take control of your financial future with Brandon and the team. Mention the Goat Fantasy podcast brought to you by and hosted by Drew Jones. And just wanted to start out the podcast by saying, yep, fantasy football's great. But sad day in footy, Neil Danaher passing away. That's sort of been front of mind for us at Fox Sports for a couple of hours now. So I'm just finding a little opportunity to get this podcast away because it was a pretty disappointing weekend of fantasy footy. A lot of underperforming players and injuries and were affected a lot, as we have been right throughout the season, really. It's been a tough one from a fantasy football perspective. But I guess when you start thinking about Neil's legacy and what he's done for Fight MND and in the broader community, with a footy lens. The big freeze, of course, only a couple of weeks away. Puts it all in perspective, but we're here to talk about fantasy football, so let's do that. And there's a few guys in your team, so I'm sure you would have already rage traded out because there's a few that deserve it. McCluggage and Rochelle sort of popping to mind ahead of most. If you traded in Grundy this week like I did, feel sympathy for you, didn't exactly deliver in what looked like it was going to be a pretty easy matchup against Mitch Edwards, but we press on and looking ahead to this week. So 3 trades for the first time this season as we go into 5 weeks of buys. It does mean this is probably the most challenging week for trades, which has already been flagged because you're having to trade in someone who's going to miss a game soon. I think most people will be trading in Charlie Banfield. That sort of seems like one we can tick off pretty early on. So he's played 2 games for the Saints as a forward and looking pretty solid. So on the bubble in Supercoach, he's still about 300k in AFL Fantasy. So he seems like an absolute slam dunk, and you've got a bit of flexibility with what you can do. You can get a bit of cash if you go to him from Braden Cook. Likewise, it's not much, but it's probably a little bit from Lombard, both who aren't playing this week. And then if you want to really get aggressive and go down from Rochelle, that banks you plenty of cash to play with this week. Obviously, Rochelle, not someone we want in our teams long term. So Banfield is a nice option for us in the forward line. If you don't have Jack Ison, I still don't think it's too late to go with him, certainly in Supercoach on the bubble, but in fantasy, a couple of solid 70s for Carlton as a midfielder off the top. And then just from a rookie perspective, so Harry Oliver's on the bubble now. Came in as a late in because of Whitfield's hamstring. So I spoke to the club today. He's a test for this week, essentially. But there's no guarantee he plays. A hamstring awareness from last Friday at training and then had a fitness test. So they were still hoping he was going to play pretty close to the start of the game. So that's why it caught everyone by surprise. So let's see how he recovers this week. Sam Taylor's coming back for the Giants. Jack Buckley's going to miss a bit of footy, you'd think, with the hamstring. So there's some moving parts at the Giants, which probably lend themselves towards Harry Oliver potentially staying in the team. So let's keep an eye on that. Port Adelaide have the bye, but Tom Anastasopoulos has been actually quite solid in his first couple of games. Still affordably priced. And then Noah Roberts-Thompson and Jasper Alga at the Tigers are the other 2 that have played 2 games if you're looking for someone in Supercoach to go down to. As I mentioned off the top, it is a tougher trading week. So when I'm looking at the guys we want to be targeting this week, it's sort of hard to give too many names that are going to be universally wanted across the board because it all depends on what buys you have strength in and which ones you're going to be thinner in and what you're sort of looking to fill gaps with. But I think Zach Merritt, as far as a premium goes, seems like he, after smashing out a massive score against Richmond, he's got the Eagles this week. He feels like someone who's actually reasonable value, despite the fact that he's over $1 million in fantasy. Taranto would be the budget midfielder, 120 odd against Essendon. He does have a tougher matchup this week against the Swans, but he was tagged the week before, so it's hard to read in too much to that low score. He's coming off a head knock, which he missed 2 weeks, but he's got the good bye. So he's a combination of value and responsibility in bye rounds. I think Bailey Dale had a great first half for the Dogs against Nam, and then he's got the last bye. So if you're looking for a defender He's below $1 million in fantasy. And then Jaden Short, in a similar boat, and he's got the good buy. So there's a couple of options for you. Duggan's probably the most in-form, mid-priced defender, but then you're buying into someone who can't kick. And that's sort of been a bit of a problem for him this season in particular. And he might sort of get phased out a little bit with using him in a distributor role at West Coast. Callaghan and Cripps are pretty, budget options in your midfield. Cripps has been great in the last couple of weeks, and then Callaghan fought through a Dunkley tag and actually put a decent score on the board for the Giants again. He's got a good buy. Anderson and Dawson are the two that we're probably looking at off the buy as far as midfielders. Darcy Cameron's probably the value player in the game right now, but have you got a ruck slot available for him? He's $816K in fantasy and ripe for the picking after a 120 against Bailey Williams on the weekend. In the forward line, I like Riley Sanders, who just continues to go to strength. He's showing a remarkable amount of consistency and getting a good lick of the ice cream in the Dogs midfield finally. And then Jordan De Goey as a value forward. Yeah, it's hard to trust him, but he has been scoring really well lately. He's $441K, amazingly cheap in Supercoach, and $780K in fantasy. Big Baz Williams, $757, is actually starting to score some points as the lead ruck at West Coast. I've always sort of been of the mind that he's a better stopper than he is scorer, but he was good again on the weekend against Collingwood. Max Hall, one of the informed forwards in the comp, is under $800K in AFL fantasy and has been getting some mid-clock with Flanders going into the back line. Harry Mackay's playing as that second ruck at Carlton. He's cheap as chips. Again, do you trust his body? Do you trust the Blues? And Ed Langdon is just over $800K, still scoring pretty well. He's got the triple position status, so there's a lot of flexibility that you can get with him. So there's some names for you around the grounds. Again, there's not many standout absolutes that you'd be targeting this week in Supercoach. So Sanders is 512 as a forward. I was looking at him as an easy up from Rochelle, who plays out for the rest of the season, or the rest until the buys, I beg your pardon. Round 16 buyer means at least you're getting good value for money if you're trading him in this week. And then Cripps is 505K and scoring pretty well at the moment if you need a cheaper midfielder. As I said, Noah Anderson, he's 565 in Supercoach. Feels like he's going to be on our radar next week. And then Bailey Smith, who didn't go too well in fantasy, was okay in Supercoach. He's 637K in Supercoach and still well up over $1 million, or 1.1, I reckon, in fantasy. He's still a gun. He was tagged for a half last week. It wasn't the ceiling score that we were hoping for, but we continue to talk about players that we feel like we need in our teams going forward. And if you want to shoot for the stars with ceiling scores during the buys, well, certainly Bailey Smith is one of those and under consideration. So there's some early thoughts ahead of the start of the buy rounds. You've got 3 trades. Do a bit of tinkering. Have a play with your side. We know that someone like a Lockie Doverston, great opportunity to get him out of the team. Blackiston, good chance to fob him off. These rookies that aren't doing anything for us. And this is a good opportunity over the buyers to do so you can get underway and get cracking with that. All right, Vale Neale Danaher, a bit of work to do here at AFL tonight. We'll get back into the fantasy swing of things tomorrow. Thanks for your company. Chat soon.